Good evening. I'm Donald Campbell, Chairman of the Bennington Select Board. Due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott and as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant Addendum 6 to Executive Order 01-20 and Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there is no physical location to attend this meeting, but in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, we are providing public access to view the meeting on CAT TV and to call into this Zoom meeting to offer comment by telephone. Notice of the public to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting is posted on our agenda, and I'll put it on the screen in just a minute, again later in the meeting. If technology fails us, this meeting will be continued at a time and place certain. All votes during the meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. So we'll start this meeting by asking members to introduce themselves in alphabetical order, and let's start with Bruce, please.
Hi, I'm Bruce Lee Clark. Welcome to the meeting.
Hi, I'm Jean Connor.
Hi, it's Jim Carroll.
Jeannie, you're still muted.
Hello, this is Jeannie Jenkins.
Hi, this is Sarah Perrin.
Okay, well, before we start this meeting, I believe we have Stuart Hurd with us or trying to join us here. I'm not sure if he's able to log in, but we do have Daniel Monks with us. We have Nancy Lively, our secretary. We have Shannon Barsotti, and we also have the good people from CAT TV.
And Melissa.
And Melissa, right. So didn't see her there, but yes. So you may not be able to see all these people on your TV screen, but Melissa Courier is among them. So there are two things I'd like to do before we start this meeting. Number one, I'd like to pause and remember our friend and former board chair, Tom Jacobs. Tom was well known and well liked by many in this community, and he left an indelible mark of optimism on Bennington. We send our condolences and our love to Lee Jacobs and her family. The second thing is that the vice chair and I inadvertently left other business off of our agenda. So with the consent of this board, I would like to add an item number 8 to our agenda, which will be other business. I suppose we have to vote on that. Would somebody make a motion for me, please?
So move.
Second? Thank you, Jane. All in favor, please unmute yourselves and say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone nay? Okay. So we will add that to our agenda at the end. Mike Cutler at CAT TV. I'm going to ask you to switch to speaker view for a moment if you're not already there, and I'm going to share my screen so that we can put call-in information up on the screen. So that should be coming up in just a moment. And while that's up, I would like to say a few words about citizens' comment, if that's all right. So, regarding citizens' comment, we're changing things around just a little bit. We're going to do citizens' comment at the end of the meeting, and we'll do citizens' comment after each agenda item that warrants citizens' comment. Regarding participation, there's a slight time delay between what you see on TV or Facebook Live and our meeting. If you call in to comment, you will be put immediately on hold. This is a meeting security feature, so please take that opportunity to lower the volume of your TV and listen carefully to your phone. I'll admit you to the meeting when appropriate in order that the calls are received. You'll hear us greet you on the phone well before you hear yourself on broadcast. Please state your first and last name, your town of residence, very clearly for the minutes for Nancy Lively's benefit. It's not an ideal way to have a public meeting, we know this, but it is temporary, and it's the best we can do at this point. Thank you really very, very much in advance for your patience.
Donald, if I may.
Go ahead.
The access number and the password are obscured by a gray.
There you go.
There, never mind, it's gone.
It was
Go on.
your
Right. Would you
document in the
mind just,
background.
I think, read the dial-in number and the meeting ID?
Sure. So the dial-in number, before we do that, there are two people in the waiting room. It looks like one is Stu Hurd. I'm going to try to admit him. And the other one, Dan, is a phone number ending in 700. Is that also Stuart? Dan Monks, I don't know if you can hear this, but a phone number ending in the 3-digit 700. Okay, if that is not Stu, then I'm going to ask that person to remain on hold until we get to a point in the meeting when we will be taking citizens' comment.
Donald, Stewart has called in and is waiting to be admitted.
Okay, all right, let me bring that back up then. Stuart, are we, do you hear us now? Are you on the phone?
I can hear you now, Donald.
Great. I'm sorry for the technological difficulties with the
Yeah,
platform, but we'll try again next week and see if we can make it work then.
yeah. At least I can see you on my other computer, but so I can see you guys, but we'll just move forward. I'm
Okay.
sorry about that.
Yeah, us too. I know you've been Zooming all week, so just bad luck that
Yeah, this is like the second time this has happened where this thing, for whatever reason, I'll have to work with my IT guy tomorrow to make sure we get it straightened around.
Okay, great. Well, at Jeannie's suggestion, I'm going to read the dial-in number. The way this works is there's a dial-in number and then there's a meeting ID. So first you dial in when the entering service picks up. It prompts you to enter a 9-digit meeting ID, which you do on your touchtone telephone, and then it will ask you to press pound, and then it will ask you to press pound a second time, and you will be in the waiting room of the meeting. And again, we will, at the appropriate time, we will let people into the meeting one at a time from that waiting room. While you're in the waiting room, you cannot hear the meeting going on, so I understand that people may want to have the TV going, but once we pick you up, we ask you to please turn the TV down so there's no sound problems. Okay, the dial-in number should be up on your screen now. It's 1-646-558-8656. That's 1-646-558-8656. And the meeting ID is 130-624-956, followed by the pound sign. 130-624-956. Okay, so we will be taking public comment after our third agenda item, after our fourth agenda item, and at the very end of the meeting when we will be having comment on agenda items after our third agenda item and our fourth agenda items. And then we will have public comment. So that's for items that are not on the agenda at the end of the meeting at 7:30 or earlier if we get through the meeting somewhat earlier. Okay, I'm going to put this down now. And we will go into the first order of business tonight, which is reorganization. And I'm not sure the Bennington Select Board's ever done anything like this remotely, maybe by conference call back in the day, not that I know of. But the way reorganization works is that I turn the meeting over to the vice chair, and the vice chair at that point will ask for nominations for chair, and then the then elected chair, will do the same thing for a vice chair. So Jeannie, I'm turning the meeting over to you at this point.
Okay. So as our first order of business, I would like to take nominations for the board chair.
Madam Vice Chair, this is Jim Carroll. I would like to nominate Donald Campbell for his steady leadership, especially with respect to the corona virus in the last several weeks. He led with compassion and concern, and I think he would and should be a great leader for our board.
Thank you, Jim. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bruce. Now, do I have, let's vote? Do I have any other nominations? No other nominations, all right. All in favor of Donald Campbell as chair of the Bennington Select Board? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did everyone vote?
Yes.
Okay, so was it, were there any abstentions or opposition? No? All right. Well,
Okay,
then congratulations, Donald. I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
thank you very much, Jeannie. Jim, thanks for those nice words. Boy, you can be a silver-tongued devil when you put your mind to it. Really appreciate that. So I'd like to do the same kind of thing, but for vice chair, which could be particularly important in these times. If I get sick, obviously the vice chair would be the person that would take over and run things. So I would accept nominations at this point for vice chair of the select board.
I'd like to nominate Jeannie Jenkins for vice chair. You guys are a great team, and I think consistency right now is really, really important.
Thank you for that nomination. Any other, would anyone like to second that?
Second.
Thank you very much. Any other nominations at this point? Okay, all in favor of Jeannie Jenkins as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's a unanimous vote. Jeannie, congratulations. You get to be the
Thank you
wing
all.
person again. Yeah, great. It's great working with you, and I really have enjoyed your help, particularly as we've tried to get through the last month or so. You've been a really good asset. All right, so as we begin to get back to something that feels a little bit more normal, we should be sure to take a minute and welcome our newest board member, Sarah Perrin, who did such a great job during the election, really put herself out there and is, I believe, well known in the community. And Sarah, we're really happy to have you with us. The purpose of the consent agenda for your sake and for everybody else is to take items that we normally find pretty routine in nature, to kind of bunch them so that we don't have to go through a bunch of time-consuming votes, and we can do them all at once. If any board member wants to pull something off of the consent agenda, that can be requested at any time. But short of that, we tend to group these things as a cluster. So tonight on the consent agenda, we have the minutes of March 23rd. We have the warrants as circulated, and especially in these times, it's really important, board, that after you study the warrants, if you have any questions or any doubts, that you are in touch with Stu Hurd about them ahead of the meeting. So it's very easy for him to answer the questions if he has his ledgers in front of him and all of his books, but it's difficult to put him on the spot at the meeting. So again, as we have done in the past, I really strenuously request that you start with your warrant questions of Stuart before the meeting. And then liquor licenses, of which there are several tonight. So I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda for the purposes of discussion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jean. So any discussion about either the minutes of March 23rd, the warrants, or the liquor licenses? No?
I have a quick question, and I'm sorry, I should have asked this earlier. It's more for the public. There's a warrant for, I believe it's $10,000 for gardening, the flowers. I'm assuming it's for in the downtown. I didn't know if there would need to be some sort of adjustment to that warrant, considering what's going on, if there's been any change in the plan for downtown.
I can answer that. We've actually, that is the down payment on the contract. Sweet William Garden Design is once again going to be providing the downtown plantings. They generally don't plant until after Memorial Day, but they do need to proceed with greenhouse preparation. So we will have plantings in our downtown. Obviously, we will make sure that when they are being planted, they will be planted in a safe manner. But perhaps by May 31st, we'll have a much clearer picture of what the pandemic has and means for us. But we wanted to go ahead with the contract because we think it's really important that the downtown look good when we come out of this.
I was hoping that was going to be your answer.
Anything for you, Jeannie.
Okay. Other questions on either the minutes, the warrants, or the liquor licenses? Hearing none, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous also. Thank you very much. The consent agenda has passed. The third item on our agenda, this may take a long time. This may not take very long, depending on what questions there are and depending on what updates there are. But this is a staff update that I believe Dan Monks, our assistant town manager and the COVID-19 special director, is going to lead us in tonight. Is that right, Dan?
I certainly would begin, and I'd ask, obviously Stuart would jump in with additional information after I comment. Is that okay, Stuart?
That's fine with me.
Okay. So it's not much new to report, except that we're going to continue, stay the course. As you know, the governor extended the order to stay home and stay safe till at least May 15th. So not a lot of new things, but continue to do the things we've already put in place. I know that you'll be discussing some taxpayer or ratepayer relief items later in the agenda, so I'm not going to address those. But as far as the operations of the town are concerned, we are continuing to have the ability to serve the residents with essential functions. We continue to be able to operate the water filtration plant, this wastewater facility. The police department is at full force and continues to provide public safety. Obviously, all of these things are taking place with modified protocols to keep employees and the public safe. All of our town buildings remain closed to the public. However, folks may call or email or mail questions, information, applications, etc. And we do have our reception desk is manned from 8 to 5. So if anybody has questions or concerns, they can dial that 802-442-1037 number and actually speak to a person. We have all town playgrounds, basketball courts, tennis courts, etc. remain closed. However, we do certainly encourage folks to use the parks to walk in a safe manner, staying the required 6 feet away. So that continues, and we certainly hope folks will take advantage of that. Most of our meetings now take place via Zoom or conference call. Obviously, Select Board is now doing all of their meetings remotely, and we have distributed in some new information. We have distributed to all of our employees cloth masks for use when they're out in the public. Stuart, I know you have probably some additional information, but I'll leave that there for now.
Very good. And I would like to jump on that comment, Dan. We are in the process of developing a protocol where these cloth masks will be worn by all employees while they're on duty. When they move into places where they can't maintain the 6 foot separation, and that would include when they get out of the truck to go get a coffee or any of that stuff. We're going to expect them to put the mask on when they move into stores, not only as a means of protecting them, but also protecting those people they come in contact with. And following up on that, I would really like to encourage the merchants in this community to outfit your folks with gloves if they're handling cash or they're handling product. Outfit your folks with masks. I know that the social distancing is important. But in a number of places that I've shopped lately, it's sometimes difficult to maintain that social distancing, especially when you're trying to move product across a counter or exchanging monies. And I think it would be just much safer for the entire community if every employer asked their employees when they're coming in contact with the public to wear a mask, at the very least, maintain the 6-foot distancing if you can, but there may be times that you can't. And the mask gives everybody that additional protection in both regards to the customer and to the employee. So that's my pitch to the Bennington community tonight when it comes to this particular disease.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Are there any questions from the board at this point about what's been presented? So, well, Dan, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we go to questions from the board? You're on mute. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Donald, not at this time. Stuart and I are obviously happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, great. Well, at this point, I would like to ask the board if they have particular questions. I know that Jeannie and I have been doing these weekly updates. I checked in with most of you about that. It's not a board function, but it's a sort of a community update function. We'll be doing that again next week. So a lot of information's been transferred that way. You probably heard the town manager and the assistant town manager tell you some of this stuff already. It's obviously a combination of fast changing and slow changing and somewhere in between. But if you have any questions for either Dan or Stuart at this point, I guess I'd ask you to raise your hands and I'll call on you, and then I'll look to see if there's anyone in the waiting room that has called in on the phone number. Now, before I do, let me put up my screen again, just so everybody has the dial-in information. And Mike, hopefully that's coming through. I haven't checked the Facebook live feed, but for people who can't see it, the dial-in number is 1-646-558-8656. And the meeting code is 130-624-956, followed by the pound sign and then the pound sign again. Okay, questions from the board? Jean, I see you have your hand up. What's on your mind?
I think I heard a piece of information. I just want to make sure it's accurate, that building permits are on hold for people's renovations of kitchens and so on and so forth. Is that true?
So building permits are not on hold, although contractors are on hold. So you can get a building permit. You just can't actually use it at this time. But we are issuing permits in contemplation of when we can when contractors can get back to work.
So if there wouldn't be a project that's that time sensitive that the permit would expire, or are they being extended it longer?
Our permits automatically are for at least 1 year, and they're routinely extended at request.
Thanks, Gene. Good question. Jim, I see you have your hand up. What's on your mind?
It's not so much a question, but it's related to COVID-19 and unemployment benefits. I wonder if I should wait until other business to update people, as well as housing for essential workers.
I actually think this might be a good time to do it. I mean, the COVID update is coming from staff, but we all have different irons in the fire too. And if you've got something to share with us, I think that would be helpful. I don't know if you're up on the latest with the Veterans Home, but I know there's been a lot of recent development on that front too. So I would like somebody to update us on that. I think it's a pretty short update and good news there, but go ahead, Jim, and we'll see about the Veterans Home.
Well, I've been fielding quite a few calls about frustration with respect to unemployment benefits. And what I've been able to get from Montpelier is that they have an antiquated system. The servers are 30 years old. And while people are able to file, the benefits have not been released. And the best advice that I've been told is to continue to try to get in there and keep at it. A year ago at this time, the state of Vermont had approximately 5,000 unemployment claims, and it's over 60,000 in the last week. And they're just trying to keep up with it. So the best advice from Montpelier is be patient. It's going to happen, and they're going to come, just not quickly enough. As far as non-essential or essential workers who would like to, and this comes from the governor's edict about housing to avoid spreading COVID-19 with their families, they can, through the appropriate agency that has oversight with them, get lodging that will be covered by the state of Vermont. So for nurses and doctors, it would either be through the Department of Health or the Agency of Human Services. They would have to check in to see that. But that comes from the governor in an effort to prevent the spread of COVID-19 among family members.
That's great, Jim. Thanks. And do you know anything about the Veterans Home, or Dan or Stuart, would you like to update, or Bruce, go ahead. Looks like you're on top of that.
Yeah, what I heard this noontime was that there was a positive test on March 15th of an employee. The employee left, did everything they were supposed to do, quarantined for 14 days. They've recently, they've done testing. They are testing, I think today they were beginning to test everybody at the Veterans Home. At the moment, there are no positive tests of anybody, staff or residents. And that's as far as I heard this noontime.
Yeah, I think that's about what I heard at noon too. I don't know if I heard it there or somewhere else, but it feels like there was a decision at the state level to make testing of institutions a statewide process. Large institutions have these situations, and they decided to be retroactive to the Veterans Home for obvious reasons. So I think it's good news. We all know that more testing is going to help us figure out where the hotspots are, and it's good news that the state is going to be testing the entire Vets Home. Okay, other questions or comments from board members, either for the staff or for each other on this updates? No? Okay. All right, well, we're going to take just a minute here, and I hope this won't be an awkward silence, but I'm going to check the waiting room and see if anybody has called in. I'll put that number up one more time. It probably feels like I'm oversharing on this telephone number. I don't want to sound like a VPR fundraiser here, but I do want to make sure that the public knows how to access this this meeting if they'd like to. The guidance we got from the legislature, and Jim, your vote and everybody else's vote for this was great and much appreciated. That we don't have to hold meetings in person as long as we make some sort of electronic accommodations during this temporary period, and they recommended that we do it by telephone. So this is the best we can do at this point. Okay, I need to put this down so I can check the waiting room. I see that there's nobody in there, so we are going to move on from item 3 to item 4, which is waivers. And this is a conversation that I believe, Stuart, you're going to lead, right?
That's correct, Donald. At this time, and I know there have been a lot of questions about what the town can do to relieve some of the financial burden that people are suffering right now because of the delays in both unemployment and stimulus monies from the federal government. So we're proposing 2 waivers. They're both small when it comes to the individual. The first would be a motion by the board to waive the water and sewer interest on delinquencies. Delinquencies would go back to January of 2020. And the total cost is estimated by Melissa, and she can jump in at this if she feels the need, to $5,000 to $6,000 per quarter. The proposal here would be that we would do this for as long as necessary to ensure that people can get back on their feet. The interest is 1% per month. We haven't installed interest yet, but we would be coming into that period where we would be doing so. The second would be a motion to waive the late fees for dog licenses. This too is a very small amount for the individuals, but because of the delays in being able to get your dog licensed, we're not going to be looking for people to pay any additional late fee. Those are the two motions that I would seek from the board tonight. I know that one of the questions that has come up is what are we going to do about taxes, real estate taxes. At this point, we're not proposing to do anything with real estate taxes because we want to see how this pandemic plays out. If in fact it begins to end in early May to June, our taxes aren't due until November 10th. We would certainly take a look at the hardship that people have suffered then. By that time, I would hope that the federal stimulus dollars and the unemployment monies would be returning. And if the economy can then reopen, say in late May, early June, we think that people can get back on their feet. But we're going to watch this. We're going to monitor it carefully. If in fact there needs to be an action taken with regard to the penalties or the interest on delinquent real estate taxes, we'll be back to the board and ask for support to waive those as well when the time comes.
Okay. Some obvious financial consequences, but it sounds like you've weighed that. I guess I would ask the board if you have any questions for the manager at this point.
I do.
Go ahead, Jim.
Stu, have you contemplated a period of time with which these interest penalties would be suspended?
Right now, it's for as long as necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
Stuart, would you like to give us a little reassurance on the financial impact of this to the town? I know I heard you say it's relatively minor, but I feel like it's worth stating, and I checked this out with you and Dan a little bit, but one of the great distinctions between towns, states, and federal government is that we can't run deficit spending. So as I understand it from you, Stuart, every year by law, we have to pay all of our bills, pay them up. And the only way to go around that would be to do a bond vote. So
and following up on that, yeah, if I can jump in, Donald,
please.
The law requires that should we finish a year in a deficit in a given fund, we are required by law to add those funds to the following year's budget and collect those monies in the next fiscal year. So with this year end coming June 30th, we would simply find ourselves increasing water and sewer fees or increasing the tax rate to make up any loss. And when you talk about borrowing, the federal government, the state government, they can borrow. We are not permitted to borrow except for capital projects. So we can't borrow to cover our operations expenses. We can borrow in anticipation of receipt of taxes, but we don't need to do that at the present time. We are in fairly good financial condition. We haven't had to do that over the last several years, but that is the only time that we can borrow that is not for a project-related bond. We are prohibited by statute from doing a borrowing to offset operating costs.
Thank you. So the two corollary questions to that, I guess, are One is probably a number of board members like myself have gotten some questions about, is there any thought on waiving some part of property tax? And I think the answer to that is we would just be making it worse in the following year if we did that. So I assume that that's not on the table at this point. And then the second question, I guess, is what's the impact, if any, really, of waiving these interest fees? Is that something that's going to make taxes more of a burden in the will it be enough that anybody feels an increased burden in the following year?
Well, you might want to unmute Melissa on this one. It's my understanding that we can absorb this $5,000 to $6,000 loss per quarter on the water and sewer. It's not really; these are fees that we're not charging interest on, not the taxes themselves. And we'll take a hard look at taxes should this go on longer than what we anticipate. But I see Melissa's up, and maybe she can comment.
Melissa, I'm going to ask you to jump in and ask you to introduce yourself and just remind us of your job description, please.
Hi, I'm Melissa Courier, and I'm the finance director for the town. And I, as Stuart already mentioned, the impact from the water and sewer interest would be about $5,000 to $6,000 per month, which I believe that we can absorb. As property taxes, like Stuart said, we're really not looking at that right now, but that would be a much larger impact if we were discussing waiving the interest on that, which we aren't. But I believe, I think that was $40,000 to $50,000 per month, which would be much more difficult for us to recover from. Donald, I'm sorry,
Donald, you're muted.
Your video.
Excuse me, thank you. So I've had 3 hands up at this point, Jean, Jim, and Bruce, and I'm going to start with Jean. Do you have a question for either Melissa or for Stuart?
Yeah, it's not really related to the waiver agenda item. It's more a manager's report, but do you want me to go ahead?
Go ahead. I think we're going to be a little bit lenient on sticking to the agenda here.
Okay. Can you just clarify any adjustments that you've had to make with staffing, and if there's any impact on the spring? I'm sure there's a ton of work that happens, road work and so forth at this time of year. Is there going to be, or is there any current impact on that?
Actually, we are working our shifts on kind of a split shift approach, so that we don't have, especially with regard to water and sewer, we don't have all of the water and sewer operators working at the same time, but they're able to cover the plants and keep those facilities running, which is obviously pretty important to the community. We've also done the same thing with the highway crews. They are working a split shift, although there is we're having conversations now about bringing more of them back in. We are doing all of the necessary cleanup that needs to be done to prevent the salt and sand residue from getting into our drainage ways and therefore into the rivers. We are improving ditching along some of our gravel roads and some of our paved roads. So we have work to do, and we are doing that. Our buildings and grounds folks are working extremely hard to keep the buildings sanitized and when they're empty. And we now understand that we may now be able to get out into the parks and begin to maintain and prepare our ball fields for activities, assuming that the pandemic eases come June and July. So we have plenty of work to do. Most of the heavy major projects, and I just finished the third quarter analysis, which you'll probably see in your next packet. All of our major projects are done. All of our major highway paving projects, major sidewalk projects. I know there is one culvert repair replacement issue that RJ hoped to get to, that we most likely will not be able to get to until all of the care that we must exercise lifts because that's a multi-man project, and we're trying to have our people. They are moving about in individuals in vehicles that we are providing. We're keeping the social distance. We've provided everybody, as Dan has already said, with masks, and we are encouraging safe distancing. But yes, normally the spring is a time of year where we clean up after the winter. We prepare our fields and our parks for use. We generally don't try to schedule big projects in the period between March, where you've got 1/4 of the year left, that is the fiscal year, because you never can tell when you'll be set with some freak snowstorm. And I think last year had this pretty major storm in April. Maybe that was 2 years ago. But so yes, we're done with the big stuff. We're not going to have to put anything off. We are being delayed a little bit with our ability to get into the parks and do some of the major preparations that we would like to do. But there was a clarification, I believe, issued either late last week or early this morning, where some of the park maintenance, that is ball field maintenance, can now start to take place.
Can you pass along from me, and I would imagine the entire board, our gratitude of the work that they're doing, probably under difficult circumstances. So I think we all really, really appreciate their work.
Will do, Gene.
Here, here. Jim, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Stu, with respect to property taxes and with the closure of the schools, I wonder if there would be a budgetary reduction from the schools with respect to the cost of infrastructure that is running the schools, and what kind of adjustment there might be. And I don't know that you can answer that, but I wonder if you've spoken with Jim Culkeen, so that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance. You and I talked about this late last week. I haven't had a chance to reach out to the superintendent's office. I can tell you from our perspective, as we come to the end of this fiscal year, there's really no savings for us, because we're doing what we need to do. We're spending the money that we need to spend, and we're trying to keep our employees working and being productive. Looking forward into the next year, I think those kinds of impacts will really depend on when we're able to go back to work, so to speak. I believe the teachers are being paid. They're working in many cases from home. I don't have children, so I can't confirm that. But I know there's a lot of online learning that's going on. So my guess would be, in this particular fiscal year, FY20, as it comes to a close, there won't be major savings, even though the schools were closed. Those major savings might not look so major when compared to the total expenditures, but I will check on that with the superintendent's office. But for the town, there are no savings. We hope to finish the year in the black. It looks pretty good right now based on my analysis, but we're not seeing huge savings from our operations, but we are continuing to operate. So,
okay. Secondly, dovetailing on what Gene Connor said, if we had any highway or paving that needed to be done, now would be the time to do it. But if I heard you right, you say that that's not necessary now.
It is not. We've done all of our paving budget, projects budget has been expended. Our sidewalk budgets have been expended. All of the major projects that those two line items cover have been completed. And so we're in what we call our cleanup period and preparation period for the next construction season.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Bruce, I see you have your hand up. Are you ready to go ahead?
Yes, this is actually, I think, for Melissa, and it's a question that was raised just by what may have been a misspeak. I don't know. Melissa, is the cost of the waiver of its water sewer interest $5,000 to $6,000 per quarter or per month?
Per quarter.
That's what was in the memo, and thank you. So, Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a motion if we're ready to receive one.
By all means, go ahead.
So I would move that the board waive water and sewer interest on the delinquencies dating back to January 2020, and continuing until such time as the board ends the waiver.
Second.
Okay, thank you very much for that motion and for that second. Board discussion?
I think it's absolutely essential that we do what we can. This seems to be a small amount, but at least it's something. We're not really free to waive a lot of stuff. This certainly is one of them, and the next item would as well. So
And there's a practical element to dog licenses. Difficult to go down to the town offices at this point. Yeah, Cassie doesn't want to go around to all of our houses and shake us down, so good. Yeah. Stuart, is that consistent with what you felt that we would keep this on until we vote otherwise?
Yes. I don't,
we'll just have
I think it's going to take us longer, I think, to recover fully than one might expect.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other discussion? We need to give Jean 15 seconds to sit down again because she's gone to the sink for a glass of water. Nice to get into people's houses here, drinking that good Bennington tap water. So I would say if there is no other discussion, I would call the question here. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's a unanimous vote. Thank you for bringing that to us, Stuart and Dan. It is, we're, as a board, we're all wanting to do as much as we can for this community, and it's very difficult because there aren't that many levers we can pull or buttons we can push to try to alleviate some of the pain that people are feeling. But thank you for bringing us this suggestion.
Great.
The next item on our agenda is the manager's report recognizing that, sorry, thank you.
On licenses.
Bruce. Before
don't we have to waive late fees for dog licenses? That was not in my motion, and I thought we would do it in two.
Yes, you're right. We do need to do that. And also I realized that I forgot to take a pause and just ask if there was public comment before we took that vote. So that's a little bit of a procedural hiccup on my part. I don't see any calls in the waiting room, so I'm going to hope that nobody had called in during that to object to the waiving of interest. But the next item, yes, would be the dog licenses. Bruce, would you like to make an additional?
I would make that
motion on that.
Yep, waive late fees for dog licenses for this current year only.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know if there's any discussion, but I am going to take a full pause here, and we're going to go back to in the name of open meeting law and try to make this accessible. I'm going to go back to the call-in number. If anybody has any thoughts, comments, or observations to make about this, this is the number to call, 646-558-8656. Enter the meeting number 130-624-956, followed by the pound sign twice. So I am pausing just for a minute to see if any calls come in. I don't see any, so I'm going to take that as there is no additional citizens' comment on this item. So if there's no further questions from the board, I would say let's call this question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so we are going to call that a unanimous motion as well. And same thing I said before, Stuart, applies to this. I'm glad we could do this. So
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, next item on our agenda is the manager's report. Stuart, recognizing that there may be some overlap with the COVID-19 update, but there are some other items in your report that I think we'd like to hear about as well. So go ahead and.
Sure thing. I've got a couple of action items. The first is the business card resolution. People's Bank is asking us to approve the resolution and have the chair sign it. We are actually increasing the limit for all cards. This is a total limit to 35,000 because we're seeing that the cards are being used. And this is a recommendation from Melissa. The bank requests this resolution. It's a one-time vote, and it will stay in place until such time as we ask to change the limit should we need to do so in the future.
So this feels relatively perfunctory, but nevertheless important. Are there any questions for Stuart on this issue of the business card resolution form for the town of Bennington? No? Okay. Stuart, my only question is, I think I got this answered earlier by email, but just the practicalities.
Donald, your sound just went very crazy.
Did it? How is it now? Can you hear me now? Okay. So Stuart, my question is, I've printed out just the signature pages on the business card resolution, the warrants, and the liquor licenses. Is it enough for me just to get a scanned, signed copy to you of these documents?
Yes, that's correct, because you're signing on behalf of the board, and they've been approved at a meeting. All we need is the signature page. We have the originals here as well.
And is that true for the liquor license application also, which has signature lines for all 7 of us?
Yes, I think in these times that is, because we know they were approved. We'll attach the minutes to the action, and because these are all renewals, I don't think that the Liquor Control Board is going to give us a hard time about that.
Okay. I would look for a motion from the board for me as board chair to sign this business card resolution form.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Jeannie, for the second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Stuart, what's next?
Transfer station pricing. This had come into me back before I actually took some time off for some vacation. It was hoped, at least Casella was hoping, that we would take some action on it, so it would be effective April 1. They understand that it didn't get onto the agenda, and no fault of anybody's, but Casella has not raised its rates in 3 years. They are proposing the increases, as you've seen in your packet, essentially about a 6% increase in some of the rates per bag charge. 6% is only like something like 25 cents or so. They're not significant. So they would like to have these in place so that they can be in place by May 1. So I'm asking the board to, if you are going to consider these, and you can say no under the contract, that you would then take an action to place them on the agenda for April 27th.
So Stuart, walk us through just a little bit how the contract works on this. We've looked at these before, at least several years ago. I think we looked at them, but I
think the last time we changed the rates was 2016.
2016.
Yeah.
So I vaguely remember it then, but why? I don't remember the answer to this, which is what happens if we don't approve any rate increases at all?
Then Casella has to operate under the contract with the rates that are in place.
And what happens eventually?
Well, we probably end up with some sort of a request for an amendment to the contract or something along those lines. I can't predict what their reaction would be. We've had a great relationship since 1987. I think it would be incumbent upon the board to at least give this some positive consideration and not rule it out flat out. But it is in your bailiwick to do so. You have the right to approve of the rates that are charged at the transfer station. They're giving you an indication that this cost has to be raised in order for them to continue to do business as they have done for the last many years. If you place it on the agenda, at least we get perhaps I can get some more information from our folks at Casella as to why this is important and what happens if nothing changes.
So comments from the board, I think I don't need to lead the witness here, Stuart, but certainly a little help in understanding why the prices need to go up at this juncture, which is difficult for everybody, I think would probably help this board quite a lot. Before I go to Jean, who has her hand up, I'm going to just put in a plug for Casella. I go there a lot, bring a lot of recycling there from all sorts of people in my neighborhood, and they do a great service for us in terms of taking all the recycling for free, taking the electronic waste. There are a lot of things. If I do happen to go there with a big load of junk from the barns, they weigh me in. It's never very expensive. I'm always amazed at how little it costs to throw away that much garbage. So I would certainly give this a good hard look. I think they perform a really important service for our community. And there's this really nice woman who works in the little booth named Wanda, and she always likes to talk about her dogs, and she's just a good sport about everything. So Wanda is a particularly nice thing about going to the transfer station. Jean, you have your hand up. Go ahead and tell us what's on your mind, please.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said, including Wanda. I adore Wanda. I'm just wondering, considering we just waived the dog licenses and the other things, this might be another small gift we can give to the community, just delaying this by a month or two. I don't think you can bring a lot of stuff to the dump, or they're discouraging people from bringing stuff to the dump that requires payment at this time anyway. So I guess I'm just wondering if we could delay it for, say, a month or two. That's all.
Just to jump in, Donald, I can certainly talk with my contacts at Casella and see if they would be willing to delay it until such time as the economy starts to climb back up. Certainly, that's probably something they might be willing to consider. But I also need to clarify: recycling is free for the folks who use the facility. But we are paying a fee, the town is paying a fee to recycle now. And it's close to $3,000 a month. I talk a little bit about that in the budget analysis, which you'll see, but markets are practically non-existent for recycling materials. So it's costing us a lot of money to recycle. So now, where it used to be, we actually made a profit. We shared in the profits that Casella made. We are now having to pay, as are all of the towns in Bennington County and the Solid Waste Alliance. We are now paying to get rid of the recyclables because it's so difficult to find markets for them.
Yeah, I believe that's true all over the state from talking to my
I'm sure it is.
State. Yeah.
So let me do this.
I appreciate the benefit that individuals can go there with recycling and dump off their recycling without having to pay for it. So a great community benefit. Go ahead, Stuart.
Let me talk with my folks at Casella and see if they'd be willing to delay it perhaps until June 1 or July 1 to see what transpires with the virus. Would that be acceptable?
Great. Stuart, I have two more questions for you. They may have been answered already, but I have Jeannie in the queue and then Jim. So go ahead, Jeannie.
Hi, so I think I had similar questions. I do support the increase, but it'd be great if we could delay it a little bit. So I'd love to hear Stuart's, what comes from Stuart's conversation. And then I was concerned also about the conversations about pausing recycling around the state. And I think Casella has weighed in on those conversations. Want to make sure that we aren't considering pausing general recycling for households at our train.
We are not, Gene. In my worst hours, I think that we might as well call it trash and toss it. But obviously, recycling is the right thing to do, even if it does cost us money. And I would assume, and have assumed all along, that the board would support spending the money to attempt to find markets and to dispose of this stuff in a proper manner, not into a landfill.
Okay, thank you.
Jim.
Hey, Stu, you haven't really given a dollar figure with respect to the increases, but you provided us with a list of the station pricing. Would you care to give just a general overview? It seems like it's minimal. Like for a compactor bag, the prior price was $3.50. It'll go up to $3.75. Solid waste and construction demolition per ton would go from $120 to $127. But overall, do you have a general percentage of what the increase would be?
It's about a 6% increase from they took a look at the last 3 years and the cost of living increases over the last 3 years, and I think they came up with a number of, it's on the second page there, 6.3%, and that's what they're asking for. I think they've rounded, obviously, in some cases, but it's not a significant increase when you consider the cost of living as it's remained relatively flat over the last 3 years. But I tend to agree with you folks when you think about the fact that kind of why now. I understand Casella's impetus, but they may be willing to work with us and delay any increase until we see what comes of these troubled times.
Thank you, Stuart, for having that conversation. I would, of course, ask you to relay the comments from the board that we appreciate them as a community partner. We need them as a community partner. We appreciate the fact that they're coming in with increases under the cost of living index. All of that is appreciated. I think our citizens would be especially grateful to have defer this until the economy starts to come back a little bit. So thank you for having that conversation and passing on our goodwill towards them.
Will do.
What else is on your list tonight?
Well, just you'll note that the PSOA construction work continues. The contractors have deemed that work essential. I don't disagree, because we're trying to bring municipal water to people whose wells have been contaminated. And that has continued throughout this particular period. No other comment other than that. I think it's important to note that the household hazardous waste collection event scheduled for May 9th has been postponed. I think there was a big ad in the paper today that said it was canceled until further notice. I sit on the board of the Solid Waste Alliance. We did talk about postponing it perhaps to sometime later in August. That will really depend on the contractor's schedule and our ability to find a site. We were going to move the household hazardous waste collection event to the middle school to give us a little bit more room to operate on recyclables and not confuse the whole recyclables and trash disposal events. But it now looks like we'll be at least until August, and we'll see how it goes. We are required under the law to hold 2 events per year, And so there will be one in Bennington, and then generally the second one is in Sunderland or Dorset. I'm not sure of the actual location that occurs, and that will be later in the fall. And so we are committed. The Alliance is committed to doing that and providing that service and meeting its requirements under the law. It's just that we dare not try to do it now. I note on the employee changes that Paul Dancero started with us April 6th. He has been in the office. He's working very closely, but practicing social distancing with Larry McLeod on getting his feet on the ground, and we expect big things from him. He came to us from the high school, and I can tell you the folks at the SVSU thought it was a tremendous loss for them. So we feel very fortunate. Work at the wastewater treatment facility is kind of on a hold. There may be some punch list work that starts up now that the weather is starting to get a little bit warmer. That will really depend on I think, whether or not the contractor deems the work essential or not. It's mostly cleanup and lawn repair and things like that. But I haven't had an update myself since returning to work, so I'll try to find out more on that. But that project is pretty much wrapped up, and we did not expend all of the bond monies. I'm waiting for a final, but it appears that we saved somewhere in the range of $300,000, $400,000 overall in the project, and we were actually able to do a little bit more than we anticipated when we first did the bond. So we think the project is successful. There are some issues that need to be worked out, as with any new mechanicals. There's training, there's the initial startup. All of those trainings have to occur. Manuals have to be presented that shows how to operate and repair them. So that stuff still needs to be done, but we're moving ahead. And then I reiterate that the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance is attempting to start up an asphalt shingle collection opportunity at the Bennington Transfer Station. We have signed the agreement. The town will be essentially the financial entity. The agreement has been returned to the state. We now must start design work, and the design basically is where are we going to place this container so people can access it. It's not a lot of design work, but the state has phases as to how they pay you. I am working with Casella's folks to identify the cost of a container, an appropriate location for that container that makes it easy to unload your materials. And we'll see where that goes as we move into the summer months. And that's all I have.
That's great, Stuart. Thank you for that. I think maybe you and Dan both, if we could just tack on to this manager's report a little bit of an update. And it's really hard for us as a community, I know, to have everything come grinding to a halt. We were making such great progress. The splash pad was about to come on, the rec center and the Putnam block. I wonder if you would like to give us any updates on what you know or have heard or can speculate about those community efforts.
Well, I have not heard lately. I know that all of the major projects, the Putnam block, the UCS addition to the rec center, have all been placed on hold, and they are unlikely to start up until such time as the governor determines that it's safe to do so. I don't know that we've done a lot of work on the splash pad park over the winter. We've identified a contractor that can help us identify the repairs and help us fund those repairs. Dan can jump in at any point. I think we have the money to do so, but the question of whether or not this is essential work has kept us from moving forward. And I think that's going to be the question, Donald, for a lot of projects that look like they were going to jump, look like they were going to hit the road running this spring, and they've all kind of ground to a halt here. Dan, you want to jump in as the planning administrator?
Sure. With regard to splash pad, everything you said is correct, Stuart. But the contractor, obviously, they're a Massachusetts contractor. They're not allowed to do any work. And I also agree, it probably wouldn't be considered essential under the Vermont statute or Vermont orders either. So we're unfortunately going to have to wait a while before we can assess that situation and move forward with the final fix of that. You're absolutely correct. All the projects, the Putnam project, or the rec center project, all construction projects are 100% shut down until the governor lifts the stay on those projects. So everything is essentially on hold until the governor lifts the order to stay construction projects.
It's too bad that we were unable to get that Route 9 bridge in during this time, eh?
Yes.
Anyway, other questions from the board for the manager on the manager's report? No? Okay. I think I'd like to, it is now 7:15. I had added other business at the end, but I think given that we have posted on our agenda that public comment would come at 7:30, it feels like it would be within the board chair's discretion to move to other business at this point, so that we can end up holding public comment, if there is any, as close to the time identified on the agenda as possible. I don't know, I may be making this more complicated than we need to, but if, with the permission of the board, I'd like to go ahead and do that and ask each of you if there's other business that you'd like to bring up, which we would normally bring up at the end of the meeting. These could be things that you've seen in the community, things that you know we haven't covered at this meeting, questions you'd like the manager and assistant town manager to address at our next meeting, or anything else that's not on the agenda, but we're not going to have a discussion about right now. So who, if anybody, would like to start that?
I'd like to speak, if I may.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'd like to remember Tom Jacobs at this point in time. And as I said in my remarks to the banner, you know, when I think about people that are in my life or have been in my life, there's always an image, visual image that comes to mind. And the image that comes to mind with respect to Tom is his smiling face. He always had a smile. And he demonstrated his dedication to the town of Bennington in his actions. And I will always remember that. In addition, I want to remember Lee. Not seeing the two of them together is really I can't imagine what it's like for Lee and her kids. But it will be difficult. And I want to also say to Mike Cutler, Mike, are you listening?
He's listening.
Mike, I want to tell you that at the close of our meetings, I can't tell you the number of times as you walked out the door and we would wave goodbye to you as you were picking up your equipment, he would turn to me and say, you know, he's my godson. I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
Tom would say that about Mike. Yeah. That's great, Jim. Thank you there. The Jacobs family is very much in our hearts. So I have several hands up. We're going to go Jean, Jeannie, and then Bruce. Go ahead, Jean.
The first thing I'd like to do is just thank Nancy Lively for her amazing minutes. I don't know if you've ever been thanked formally, but you're rolling with the punches through this process and you're just the best. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Jean.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm on for that.
I was just wondering, I realized the IACP schedule of their reporting and all of that is probably all being revisited. I just didn't know if there had been any communication with them. And the other thing is, this was started out as a personal thing and I'm expanding it to the board, but I was thinking about writing a letter to the editor, expressing my gratitude for the leadership that the hospital has provided the community during this crisis. And then I realized maybe it should come from the entire board. And if the board would like, I'd be happy to draft a letter that we would all approve and sign and send to the banner. So that's
Well-
something that we can think about. That's all I have.
Jean, you and I had a chance to speak briefly about this, but I think that'd be a great idea. We are likely to see the hospital on our agenda in the near future, but nevertheless, it would be great to send a letter of appreciation to all of their staff, and it would be wonderful if we could all sign it. And the only way for that to happen is for somebody to draft it and for us to take it up in public session, much as we would any other kind of resolution. So if you'd be willing to take a stab at that this week, and certainly feel free to pick up, if you'd like to pick somebody in the select board and bounce some ideas back and forth with them, you're welcome to do that. Less than 3, obviously, or 3 or less, but if you'd like to bring something to us at our next meeting, I think that would be very welcome. Is there anyone on the board that feels otherwise? Okay, great. Good stuff, Jean. Thank you for that. Jeannie,
Any volunteers who wants to help me do it?
Jean, I'm happy to help you do it.
That's great. Thank you both very much. Jeannie, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I think I also want to just express my gratitude for so many people in this community who have been doing such incredible work, a lot of them meeting face to face with people on a regular basis. And one of the groups that has been just extraordinary in our community is the emergency housing group. Right now, they are housing 105 households in motels in the county, and most of those are in Bennington. That's a lot of people who did not have places to live, some of whom are newly out of housing and some who have been out of housing in the past. But I think that's, it's an extraordinary number. And I think one of the things that this group has been doing is not only looking at the immediate needs of families, but also thinking about what's going to happen when we move into the next phase of this crisis. And folks need to resume sort of normal lives. There are a lot of households, and we probably, I'm sure, haven't seen all of them who, aren't able to pay rent right now, who may be facing eviction in the future. So the next phase of this housing crisis and just the pandemic is going to be going to be hard on us in different ways than what we're seeing now. And then I just do want to say again, thank you to the Hunger Vermont group and the local Bennington Hunger Council for all the work they're doing. Andrea Malinowski has been amazing in keeping up with all the changes in where food can be found and who can help on what day. And I think it's just been an extraordinary effort. And I believe that anyone that needs food in this county has access to it through a range of services that are available. So I just really wanted to say something about both those groups, because in many cases they are meeting face to face with individuals. They are, putting their own lives at risk to make sure that our community has shelter and food and is well cared for. And that's all.
That's great, Jeannie. Thank you. This pandemic has brought a lot of things to light that many of which we already knew, but have really been highlighted by this pandemic. Certainly one of them is that not everybody has access to the internet. Not everybody has good access to a computer. When the state and the feds throw out a lot of links, I think that can be very frustrating for people. And I appreciate the fact that this community is trying to make it personal, trying to make places you can call and trying to make it as accessible as possible, even if you don't have a computer. Bruce, you have your hand up.
Yes, couple of thanks and one concern. Thanks as well to those who are out there. There's various groups making masks. I'm not a sewer, but I've actually made a mask for me, and I can't imagine doing hundreds of those. So thanks for those. Also to Maureen O'Neill and her staff for continuing the lunch distribution to kids. I hope everybody's had a chance to see what has been going out. This is done around Vermont, but it's not done everywhere in this country. And you know, I've had communications from friends who are worried about school bus drivers who don't have any money coming in. Our bus drivers are being paid to deliver food to kids, and I think that's really quite remarkable. And Maureen knows the numbers, but it's in the thousands. So remembering that any kid 18 years or younger are eligible for this, for the lunches that are going out, not just for the 5 days of the week, but also on Friday for the weekend. So I think kudos to them. My concern is about farmers markets. And I know that the governor was asked about this today and is still adamant about what he thinks his order says. I must admit, I am hard pressed to see how pre-ordering from the farmers at a farmer's market and driving up and picking up your food after you've already paid for it electronically, how that creates a greater problem than my going and pre-ordering a book from the bookstore or pre-ordering something else and doing pickup or going to Madison's on Friday night for takeout. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about this, but I wanted the community to know at least that I was concerned about it. I think I see that a number of you are as well. I don't know what options we have. Probably not much other than persuasion, but I'm concerned about our farmers market here in Bennington, and I'm concerned about the farmers who have produce and who have product and would love to be able to sell it to us. So I'm open for thoughts. I don't have.
That's great comment, Bruce. You know, the farmers market's very dear to my heart. I was on the board for many years and continue to consider myself a part of that in my heart. But I was talking to both Brian and Dick Sears about that today. I know Jim Carroll's been on the phone some. Essentially, Dick Sears got back to me and said the governor's got his heels dug in on this. If we want to change this, we need to call the governor's office. So I would recommend everybody who cares about this calls the governor's office. I don't have the phone number right in front of me, but it's easily accessible on the website. I think the message is that the Bennington Farmers Market has done a better job than most, has done an exemplary job, really, of trying to figure out how to deliver food, local food, to our community during a time of pandemic. And they spend a lot of time working out a system that's safe and social distance sensitive. And they have been caught up in a very broad brush stroke, which is all farmers markets have to close. So I understand why in-person farmers markets don't necessarily work anymore, and that kind of close contact can't work. But the Bennington's Farmers Market had worked this out, and I would encourage everybody to let the governor know that. Donald, go ahead, Jim.
I can give you the governor's number.
Please.
It is 828-3333. Good luck getting through. However, what I do want to say is that, you know, I'm equally perplexed, Bruce, when we have so many food pantries that are dispensing food, and they're doing it. They're following the social distancing protocol that the farmers market would be following as well. So, you know, make that call. I certainly will keep pushing. Brian Campion and Dick Sears have been the tip of the spear on this, but you know, the governor has to recognize that we have, I think there's at least half a dozen food pantries and dispersal points that the Bennington police have participated in. And I don't see the difference.
Yeah. Well, let's not make this a topic of discussion any more than we already have. But Bruce, thank you for bringing it up. And Jim, thank you for your work. I hope you'll bring all the other local delegates to force on this one. And yeah, let's let the state know how we feel about this one. Jeannie, I see your hand up. Was that from before? Did I fail to take it down?
Well, no, I was just going to also say I do think it's important that we all write letters and that we call. And I appreciated the Better Bennington Corporation sent a letter. There are petitions going around, but I do think that this is an issue that more information for the governor to understand how proactive the Bennington Farmers Market has been and how safe it is a really important issue. So thank you, Bruce, for bringing it up.
Yeah, that's great. And anything from other? Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, this is just something that Justine and I have just discovered over the last several days. There are two nice things that are happening in Vermont right now. The first is Light Up Vermont, and you will see a star with lights on it in the town office front window. That remains on, and that's something that people are being encouraged to do at their houses, or put their Christmas lights back up and turn them on, just to as kind of a show of togetherness and an opportunity to express a bit of joy at a time when things seem so terrible. And the second thing that came our way is the idea that you move to your front porch or your front stoop or your front window at 7 o'clock at night and you clap or bang pots and pans as they're doing in San Francisco neighborhoods. It's something that catches on. Our niece started participating in it down in her neighborhood in Brooklyn. At first, there was only a few houses that were out, but now pretty much everybody in the neighborhood comes out at 7 o'clock. They clap, cheer, do whatever they need to do to sort of show that we're all in this together, we're all working at it together. And those are a couple of nice little things that I think we can all do and all participate in that might just bring a little bit of joy to us as we move through this time.
That's great, Stuart. Thank you. We are here. We are here. Yeah, I guess we'll sort of temporarily suspend the noise ordinance while we do the banging on pots and pans.
If it gets that loud, Dial, then we've accomplished something really good.
Yeah, okay. Anything else from other board members before we move on? Sarah, you were all set? Welcome. We'll welcome you again to the board and appreciate having you on. The only thing I have is that Jeannie and I will be doing another community update next Monday. As some of you know and have, as Bruce pointed out to me, but as many of you may know, the governor kind of sidled in on our slot, which was 11 o'clock on Mondays. And so he doesn't seem ready to give up the slot for us. So we're going to move our community update to 1 o'clock on Monday. That's not a board function. It's just town staff and the chair and the vice chair getting together and trying to bring in important people from the community to make sure that important local information goes out to people as we have it. I did skip over the upcoming agenda item. That was accidental, but in fact, I think Jeannie and I, our plan is to not do a lot of heavy scheduling right now, to try to keep the agendas relatively light, especially while we're getting used to this video conferencing meeting style, to make sure that we're not taking on controversial things where public input would be extremely important and might be somewhat difficult with the 2-part call-in number. Doesn't mean we're not going to get the town business done. It just means that we're going to try to lightly avoid taking on very controversial topics at a time when it's somewhat difficult to get public input. So I'm going to say that we're not going to do any agenda setting at this point, Stuart, unless you have something that you want this board to know, or Dan, something you want this board to know we'll be taking up at our next meeting that we should be researching or being aware of in the meantime? Do you have anything that you'd like us to be bird dogging?
The only thing I have that I know is there's now some attempt to bring it forward is the SBMC building sale.
Okay, and that would come into public session?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take an opportunity to share my screen one more time with the call-in numbers. Mike, if these pop up, if these don't pop up, let me know. Again, the way to call in if you need to is 646-558-8656. The meeting ID number is 130-624-956. This is the number that Stuart's called in on, and I think Nancy Lively called in on this at one point. So we know this works. But if anyone has anything for citizens comment, this is the way to call in. So we had hoped to have citizens comment come on at 7:30. It's now 7:32. So I'm going to put these numbers down. I'm going to look to the waiting room and see if there's anybody that would like to make a comment from citizens comment. And trying to be, I know it's a little bit of an awkward pause here, but I'm trying to be conscientious about the fact that there's a 10-second delay between, something like a 10-second delay between our what we say and what when it goes out on Cat TV. But not seeing anybody in the waiting room, I'm going to close public comment, and we do have a need for an executive session tonight. It's for the purposes of this board, it's probably important for you to know that what will be happening during executive session is that as host, I'll be ejecting everybody from the meeting that is not a board member or a key staff member key to that item. And so we will be ejecting Cat TV and Melissa and Nancy, and we will just have the board members left for executive session. So I think it's probably worth saying, just to cut Bruce off at the pass, that we will not be making any decisions at the end of this. It is not necessary to log back in if we have any decisions that pertain to the board coming out of this that need to be made in open session. We will take that vote at our next duly scheduled meeting. So, given that, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. We are going to move into executive session. Bennington, thank you for your incredible patience. It's probably not very much fun to watch this little bunch of boxes floating around the screen, but I'm sure Mike makes it look better than we think.